Hi, Roy here, and welcome again to another edition of The Right Has Left. I am your host, Roy Carton, and we have a lot of news today, so we're going to get right into it. And this is going to be our top story right off the top, and that is Donald Trump's war on Venezuela. Yeah, it has turned out to be a lot of just quick, snap, here we go. We really want to go to war. And hopefully that's not what's going to happen, but I am beginning to see quite a trend on this as far as Trump's aggressive tactics on moving towards Venezuela. And so he's calling it his narco-terrorism. It's packaged neatly for the nightly news bulletins and social media generation. If you've just seen, like, sinking all of these ships that allegedly is containing a lot of narcotics, although we've seen no proof of it, but that's basically what he is saying. So, Donald Trump is moving forward with sending perhaps ground troops into Venezuela, and he's already got a lot of military ships and aircraft carriers off the shore there in the Caribbean. So it's getting kind of interesting, isn't it? Yet behind the unclassified footage lies an intricate policy that fuses an 18th century wartime law, spycraft, and other trade deals that is fast reestablishing America's sphere of influence. The overall plan has been dubbed the Monroe Doctrine by insiders, and its aim is in part to rid of America's backyard of Chinese influence. Now, the Venezuela question, the strikes on drug boats can be traced to one of the unusually large fleet of U.S. warships, drones, and troops that have been converging off Venezuela's coast in recent weeks. Now get this, 8 warships, including 3 destroyers, 3 amphibious assault ships, a cruiser, and a smaller flotilla of combat ships now make up the largest U.S. military presence in the region in decades. They are joined by a squadron of F-35B Lightning jets and a handful of Reaper drones, which are capable of flying long distances and carrying up to 8 laser-guided missiles. The B-2 bombers have also been spotted flying off the coast. Now, just yesterday and Friday, Trump announced the U.S. Gerald Ford, the Navy's newest aircraft carrier, was also en route to the territory. It is quite the counter-narcotics operation, people have been saying. The sheer scale of the fleet has convinced Venezuelans and many others that Trump is in fact preparing for a ground assault. Now, what is all of this is heading towards is this guy. And he is the president of Venezuela. And this is why all of this news is going on, due to the fact that President Trump wants to get this guy out of office. And that is no secret. The deployment of the Caribbean is by far what you would need to conduct an occasional strikes on vessels allegedly smuggling drugs. Now, as you're well aware of, Trump has been sending, assault vehicles out to sink the ships that they say are carrying fentanyl and drugs and everything else, but they actually have not, shown evidence of such. So, they're literally killing people off, in these ships with not showing us, the American people, that there are drugs on those ships. I mean, if that is the case, great, but we haven't been able to see any of that. So, the gunboat policy intended to put pressure on Mr. Maduro, as we just shown, the president of Venezuela, with the goal of forcing him to step down and convince him to step down and take a golden exit. Now, if that fails, emboldening those in his government who might topple him is another avenue. The aspiration for regime change is hardly hidden. The president has linked Mr. Maduro's regime with criminal cartels, and he's also openly said he's approved the CIA to conduct covert missions in the hopes of toppling him. If he doesn't want to F around with the United States, he said. And the president just said that recently. Watch this clip.
Natural resources. He even recorded a message to you in English recently offering mediation. What could we do in order to stop that?
He has offered everything. He's offered everything. You're right. You know why? because he doesn't want to fuck around with the United States. Thank you, everybody.
Now, Zelensky has much of Kharkov for his many other adversaries, yet there is another layer to consider on all of this. Some sources close to the Trump administration point out that assembling an invasion fleet may be helpful for Mr. Trump to solve another separate policy headache. Immigration. Yeah, there you go. Declaring war could help with the revival of the Alien Enemies Act, last used to intern Japanese, German, and Italian nationals during World War II here in the United States. As you're well aware of, even though there's just very little left of them, there were camps that we put the people during World War II in, like the Japanese and the Germans and the Italians that were citizens here in the United States, and we locked them all up in fear that they might all be spies. We panicked. So that's the reason for this. They're going to deport Venezuelan nationals en masse. Now, under the 17th century law, a president can target citizens of a hostile nation in times of declared war, or if an enemy government mounts an invasion or a predatory incursion. Early in his second term, the president dusted off the wartime law, but it was later blocked by the Court of Appeals. The two architects of the Venezuela campaign are Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, and, yes, Stephen Miller, the guy that is extreme to the right and really does not like any minority group except white privileged people. Now, he's known as Trump's brain. He's also one of the architects of Project 2025. On all things immigration, that is Stephen Miller. Venezuela and the drug boats thus become a complex fusion of Trump's great fixations, national security, immigration, and the need to revive American dominance. The Monroe Doctrine, Venezuela under Mr. Maduro, who now has a $50 million bounty on his head, has become something of an open shop for America's adversaries. China has poured millions of dollars into Venezuelans' oil projects and loans, while Russia has armed Mr. Maduro with fighter jets, helicopters, tanks, and air defense systems. Experts say Mr. Trump's push into the region is part of an attempt to revive the Monroe Doctrine, the 19th century principle that views Latin America as America's backyard and that declares that the Western Hemisphere is off limits to adversaries. Project 2025, the Trump's long-thought blueprint for his second term, calls it a re-hemisphering. It calls for the capture of supply chains in the region as a requirement of the United States economic security. Mr. Trump has signed off on an economic punishment targeting the Venezuelan oil with a broader goal of reasserting U.S. dominance. Meanwhile, he told his generals last month we're restoring a needed focus on defeating threats in the Western Hemisphere. All the adversaries we've gotten have a significant presence in Venezuela, and that's why back in 2019 and today, removing Maduro is such a priority. Now, John Bolton, Mr. Trump's former national security advisor, and right now he's trying to, get him thrown in jail, along with Letitia James, who you just saw. These guys that I just mentioned, they all work for Trump loyally, and now because of them not supporting Trump, he's getting them all locked up. That's Trump's thing. If you go against me, I'm getting rid of you. And if I have to throw you in jail, I'll do it. So, anyway, he's on part of Trump's revenge tour. Now, it's long overdue, so said Bolton. And in the case of Venezuela, it's not just China. There are the latecomers, Mr. Bolton stated. The Donald Doctrine has become a rallying cry across the GOP base. I am at least thrilled that we're finally using military force in our own hemisphere against people that would have done harm against the American homeland. Popular conservative Charlie Kirk told his podcast a week before his death that beyond Venezuela, which has the biggest oil reserves in the world, is just the latest example part of a pattern of the administration to pick off countries with ties to China. Now, Trump has even sought to offer a lifeline to those in need of American innovation in return for his loyalty. In Buenos Aires, as an example, Mr. Trump is planning to buy Argentina uranium in a deal with Javier Milei to counter China's influence. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, has pushed to expand U.S. access to the country's valuable uranium supply in return for a $40 billion lifeline for Argentina's falling economy. China has poured tens of millions into projects into the South American nation, becoming its second largest trading partner and the top buyer of its agriculture exports. So, what I'm saying about all of this, you can read between the lines. While this is a war on drugs that they like to say to us, the American people, and using media to say it's a war on drugs, well, that's great. I mean, we want to get rid of the drugs that are coming into the United States. But you can now see the underlying factors of all of this. Oil, uranium, and getting control of the Panama Canal back to the U.S. Those are what's really happening. And the bottom line of all this is money. Billions of dollars of money that the U.S. wants to take control of again. And yeah, they want to maybe get this guy out. And yes, maybe he has connections to the cartel. And maybe he's a bad player, a bad actor. But, you got to have some critical thinking skills and look what else is going on here. The United States, especially under the Trump administration, is obsessed with one thing: money, and lots of it. So, keep that in mind as you, look at all this. So, in other news, kind of along on the same line, since we're talking about oil, the Trump administration has announced a plan to lease federal waters for offshore oil and gas drilling through a series of auctions. Now, this plan includes 30 lease sales in the Gulf of Mexico and 6 in Alaska's Cook Inlet over the next 15 years, with the first sale scheduled for December 10th of 2025. The proposal also includes potential leasing in new coastal areas along the Atlantic and Pacific through specific details, though, are still being drafted and await formal approval. The plan involves 30 lease sales, as I mentioned, in these states, specifically Alaska's Cook Inlet through 2032. And other sale is to begin December 10th, 2025, with the sale of Alaska's Cook Inlet. Now, we're talking about offshore drilling for oil off the coast of North Carolina, off the coast of California, off the coast of Alaska, and we already want to increase drilling that's off the coast in the Gulf of, I'm still going to call it the Gulf of Mexico. I'm sorry. I know they want to say Gulf of America. To me, it's still the Gulf of Mexico. But they want to increase drilling there as well. The most sensitive area is the New England coast. Now, when you go through all of this offshore drilling that I just mentioned, these previously were all environmentally protected area. They are natural breeding ground for the fish and for the birds. Now, if you remember the catastrophe in the Gulf of Mexico, about a decade ago, you saw all of these, due to an oil spill, thousands upon thousands of fish died and thousands of birds were covered with oil, and most of them died. They were those that did get to shore. Environmentalists were able to rescue them and clean them up. So that's the bottom point. Trump does not give a rat's about environmental policies or environmental rules. That's why these areas are offshore. His thing today is drill, baby, drill. Get all the domestic oil that you can, and to hell with the environmental policies that are in place. That's really what he wants to do. So, and all of this stuff is in the big, beautiful bill. So you can follow that as well. All of these things that to give approval for this drilling is in that big, beautiful bill. But they did not want to tell you that. So, and so the other thing that just recently happened, as I'm going through some of this late breaking news before I get into some other stuff here, is that President Trump said this past Thursday that he was terminating negotiations with Canada over the high tariffs that he imposed on its steel, auto parts, and other major exports, adding a new uncertainty to the relationship. And that was all because of the ad that Canada was running that featured Ronald Reagan, where he's talking about, anti-tariffs. So Canada, backed down to the, Donald Trump once again, and they took the ad off. Now, what Trump was saying, which makes this kind of odd, is he said that was all AI generated, and Ronald Reagan never said those things about, tariffs and how bad they are. Yes, he did in fact say that. In fact, he's probably rolling over in his grave about Trump's comments. It was not AI generated. It is the truth. It is, you can look it up. He actually said those things, but Canada took it down. So, but Trump has yet to say he's going to restore negotiations on the tariffs. He hasn't made a final decision. But these are just a thing that, Trump likes to do when people, upset him. And it's a sad thing that we have to come to that, but there you go. So once again, Canada is, backing down. Speaking of Canadians, this is when all the Canadian snowbirds come to Florida. And guess what? I usually like to look at the license plates when they start making their migration back to Florida, specifically in the town that I live here on the East Coast. I have yet to see one Canadian license plate so far this year in Sebastian. Now, some of my friends, they are saying that they're seeing them in Palm Bay and they are seeing them in the Melbourne area. But here, we got 3 trailer camps here in this area that are specifically for the Canadians, and I haven't seen any plates yet. They got to pay an extra $60 to get in here, plus the fingerprinting, plus the other forms they got to fill out just to get into across the border because of Trump's new policies. He thinks all these Canadian seniors are bad people and they're carrying drugs and all that. You know that, don't you? So anyway, on Truth Social, the president said he was ending all the trade negotiations. He always gets on Truth Social at 2 o'clock in the morning. Guy never sleeps with big caps and and he said that he didn't like that Reagan ad, and he said he was speaking negatively about tariffs. And then, of course, Trump says, in all caps, tariffs are very important to the national security and economy of the United States, and based on their terrible behavior, all trade negotiations with Canada are hereby terminated. So he throws a temper tantrum. He acts like a 6th grader. So, anyway. And also, Trump is demanding that the Justice Department pay him about $230 million in compensation for the federal investigations into him, according to the people familiar with the matter, who added that any settlement might ultimately be approved by the senior department officials who defended him or those in his orbit. The situation also has parallel to American history, as Mr. Trump, a presidential candidate at the time, was pursued by federal law enforcement officers, the ones that he's now trying to round up and get a revenge tour and jail all of them because he did what he did to them, and how dare they? And, he still thinks he won the 2020 election, as you're all aware of. And so he wants $230 million from the Justice Department because he lost that money in defending himself, and he deserves it back. And it's, again, this is a typical another possible ethical conflict. It's created by installing the president's former lawyers atop the Justice Department. So now that all of his lawyers are now Trump loyalists, he can go after all these people, and he thinks he can get his $230 million back. Not that he needs it. He's already got millions and billions of dollars through cryptocurrency and everything else, but I want more because I love money. So, he submitted his complaints through administrative claim processes that is often the precursor of lawsuits. In the first claim, lodged in late 2023, he seeks damages for a number of purported violations of his rights, including the FBI and special counsel investigation into Russian election tampering and possible connections to the 2016 Trump campaign. So that's what he wants his money back for. And it's pretty outrageous that he wants to do this, and I'm sure since all of these people are now loyalists in all those departments, he'll probably get his $230 million. What can I say? So you just have to watch and see what happens. So another thing that's here in the top story is, if I can find Mr. Mark Rubio, where did he go? Well, I can't find the graphic, but that's okay. U.S. Secretary State Marco Rubio said that the U.S. still wants to meet with Russia despite the Trump administration's imposing sanctions on Russia's 2 largest oil companies. We would still like to meet with the Russians. I had a good call with Foreign Minister Lavrov, and we'll follow up on that. We're always going to be interested in engaging if there's an opportunity to achieve peace, Rubio told reporters. As he was heading to Israel, which we'll get to in a moment, I think the president has said repeatedly for a number of months now that at some point we're going to have to do something if we don't make progress on the peace deal. And he thought today would be a good day to do so. President Donald Trump imposed sanctions on Russia's two largest oil companies, telling reporters in the Oval Office he felt it was time for the sanctions and noting that we waited a long time to impose them, Trump said. And he canceled an anticipated meeting with Putin, telling reporters, I just didn't feel like we were going to get to the place that we have to get to. Well, of course he won't, because every time he meets with Putin, Putin plays him 100% to the hilt. Putin knows how to pull Donald Trump's string. He will put on the biggest smiles and shows for Trump, and Trump thinks he's getting somewhere, and he'll just play them to the hilt. And if Trump hasn't figured that out yet, then I don't know what to tell the guy. You see it every darn time. The war with Ukraine and Zelensky and Putin, no matter how much the U.S. tries to negotiate, typically does not go anywhere because Putin plays them. Now, these two things that he's done with the two oil companies, well, that's going to maybe have our domestic oil prices go up a little bit. I haven't seen too much of a factor of that yet, but for all the European countries that do import oil from Russia, well, they've already stopped doing that. So maybe this tactic might work on Russia because their economy already is sinking down almost every day, and maybe something will happen with this. We'll just have to wait and see. So I don't know. Another thing that's going on in the news today is House Speaker, Mike Johnson. So let's talk about him for a minute. House Speaker Mike Johnson said today that he would be open to meeting with Representative-elect Teltia Grahava, whom she has yet to be sworn into Congress. So they're still waiting to see what she can get herself in Congress, and it's not happening yet. So anyway, this lady right here that I was just speaking about, that I butchered her name, Teltia Grahava. There we go. We're doing a little better there now. So this lady here has been trying forever to get sworn in as Arizona's representative, and it hasn't happened, and now she's filed a lawsuit. And she's been waiting and waiting and waiting. This has never happened before in the history of the House. And, of course, he says, I'm always open to meet with any member of the House, Johnson said when he's asked by CNN's Caitlin Collins if he'd meet with Grahava. But the speaker went on to say, I just been so busy, I'm working about 22 hours a day right now. I call BS on that. And she said she's no longer doesn't even want to speak with him because she's filed a federal lawsuit against him, citing Arizona's lawsuit against the House of Representatives. And not only her, but this is a state that filed this because he refuses to swear her in. At this point, since a lawsuit's in place, I don't think it's advisable for me to have a private meeting with him or anybody else. The lawsuit accuses Johnson of delaying her swearing in because she is attempting to prevent a petition that would force a vote on the House on releasing records around the Jeffrey Epstein files, as well as strengthen his hand in the ongoing budget and appropriations negotiation. She's right. That's exactly why she can't get sworn in. Johnson's been told by Trump to stall and stall and stall. She says, I've got a 16-person staff ready to go, but I can't get access to the phones in my house. I can't get to the computers because they won't give me sign-on because I am not sworn in. And she says she knows exactly what I can and cannot do, and I feel like she's trolling me. And, of course, the government shutdown continues. So yeah, I can see her point, she's stuck, And Johnson keeps saying, well, she can do her job. She can work with her constituents in Arizona. She can use her own personal phone, but she doesn't have access to anything, not one damn thing. So I swear to God, sometimes I think Johnson's got the mindset of a 6-year-old. I don't understand that. All right, moving on to J.D. Vance. Well, J.D. Vance criticized this past Thursday a vote by the Israeli parliament to advance a bill on the proposed annexion of the occupied West Bank, calling it a very stupid political stunt, and Netanyahu agreed with him. So I personally take some insult to it, Vance said at Israel's Ben Gurion airport as he was departing the country after his visit. The West Bank is not going to be annexed by Israel. The policy of the Trump administration is that the West Bank will not be annexed by Israel anytime soon or in the future. is our policy. And if people want to take symbolic votes, they can do that, but we certainly weren't happy about it. The preliminary vote Wednesday in support of Israel's annexation of the West Bank passed by just one vote, 25 to 24. And this was done during Vance's visit. It was a political stunt. And as I said, the Netanyahu's office also criticized the vote on that bill and another narrow piece of annexation legislation, calling it a deliberate political provocation by the opposition to sow discord during Vice President J.D. Vance's visit to Israel. And so, as we know, the ceasefire is very touchy right now with Hamas and Israel. It's just hanging on by a thread. So this is why they were doing that, because the fact is that he's trying to cement the ceasefire even tighter, because they're still killing people. Israel is, and Hamas is fighting back as well. So they've got reason to do this. I want to make a quick comment here about the hostages released. Some of the people that you see on these videos that the media talks to, some of them said that Hamas treated them very poorly, and then there has been several that had been interviewed that said Hamas treated them quite well. If you see the video of the hostage release that Hamas was holding, a lot of them were in pretty good shape. They said things got bad when the food ran out because, with all the bombing, food was not getting into Palestine, and so therefore they had nothing to feed them. They said before that, when the food was plentiful, Hamas was feeding them very generously every day. And then the food ran out, and so things got bad. True, Hamas maybe mistreated some of these hostages, maybe most of them, but there were a few that actually came out and said they were treated fairly. So I found that kind of interesting. So it's just food for thought for you. Moving on with other news, huge crowds marched in major cities in smaller gatherings, which were held across the country for No King's Day, protest that was held against President Donald Trump's administration. Now, organizers said there were nearly 7 million people at more than 2,700 events in all 50 states, which police said were mostly peaceful, with many large cities reporting to protest-related incidences or arrests. And as you're watching this clip, listen to what Bernie Sanders had to say.
President Trump, we don't want you or any other king to rule us. Thank you very much, but we will maintain our democratic form of society.
So the demonstrators voiced outrage at a rage of Trump's policy, but some key themes took center stage, including perceived threats to democracy, the administration's ICE raids and troop deployments in United States cities, and cuts to federal programs, especially health care. And that's what the Democrats are holding back on opening up the government, is because they want the Republicans to restore the Obamacare and Medicare and Medicaid benefits. And the Republicans are saying, no, we need those billions of dollars to support ICE and help out, Venezuela and Argentina and everywhere else. But, the people here at home, they can go to hell. We'll talk about that if you'll just pass the bill. I call BS on that as well. So moving on to other news. As construction begins on the United States President Donald Trump's new $250 million White House ballroom, mystery continues to swirl around the identities of the wealthy donors and corporations paying for it. The Secret Service has now instituted limited press access to the construction site over the negative feedback coming to the Trump administration. Groundbreaking for the ornate 90,000 square foot project began on Monday with excavators and construction workers tearing out portions of the East Wing. The U.S. president has said that he will personally pay for significant portions of the construction and suggested that some anonymous donors would be willing to spend more than $20 billion to complete the project. The funding model has sparked concern among some legal experts who say it may amount to paying for access to the administration. You put that money in towards my nice little ballroom, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. I view this as this enormous bathroom as an ethics nightmare, said Richard Painter, a former chief ethics officer for the Bush White House between 2005 and 2007. He told media, by using access to the White House to raise money, I don't like it. He says these corporations all want something from the government. A dinner for the potential donors was held at the White House on October 15th, including senior executives from prominent U.S. companies, including Blackstone, OpenAI, Microsoft, Coinbase, and Planter, Lockheed Martin, Microsoft, Amazon, and Google, as well as Comcast, which owns NBC. They were there as well. Now, also present was Woody Johnson, the owner of the New York Jets team, and Sherry and Edward Glazer, who together with their siblings own both the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Manchester United. A pledge seen from CBS News suggested that donors could be eligible for recognition for their contributions. While plans are still being finalized, the recognition could potentially take the form of names etched into the structure. The White House originally said that the gigantic structure would have a seating capacity of 650 people. This week, Trump said that it'll be able to hold 999,000 people. Only one contributor has so far been revealed. Court documents show that on YouTube, they will pay $22 million toward the project of a settlement with Trump regarding a lawsuit over the suspension of his account following the January 6, 2021 riot at the U.S. Capitol. An official list is yet to be published, though the White House officials said they plan to reveal this one. Documents obtained by media indicate that the donations will be handled for the Trust of the National Mall, a nonprofit that works with the National Park Service and fundraises for projects on the mall and at the White House for the event for potential donors. Now, before I move on, let's talk about a couple things. A lot of people on the right said that why is everybody upset about this? The president can do this, and, other presidents have done things, and they put things in. What's the big deal? Other presidents have put in a bowling alley, which doesn't require congressional approval, and they put in a basketball court, which doesn't require congressional approval. The West Wing was built to go over the bunker area where the president and his top military aides meet during critical worldwide disasters and or military events. And so they had to have something to go over that when the bunker was put into place. So that's why that's there. Another thing, most of the time when a major construction event like this is done, past presidents have traditionally gone to Congress to seek their approval and get their stamp of approval on these kind of projects. Trump has not done that. He just said, I'm just going to go ahead and do this and the hell with you. So this is why this is kind of a sticky little situation. Overall, Trump can do what he wants. I mean, there are some stop gates in place, but pretty much, he just broke traditions, what he did, and just went ahead and did it. He didn't ask anybody anything. I'm just going to go ahead and do this. But, and technically and legally, when you clear out all the protocols, he can. So, but he just, the guy doesn't have any couth to do anything. So, he said many of the attendees have been really, really generous and that some had asked whether $25 million was an appropriate donation. I said, I will take it. The White House has insisted that there was nothing inappropriate about soliciting donations, that the ballroom will be used by future administrations. The renovations will not cost taxpayers 1 cent, so he says. Now, one other thing. Do you remember when Trump said that my ballroom annexation will not affect the East Wing at all? Do you remember that? Watch this clip.
Interfere with the current building. It won't be. It'll be near it, but not touching it, and pays total respect to the existing building, which I'm the biggest fan of. It's my favorite. It's my favorite place. I love it.
Well, with all the demolition of the East Wing, again, he was lying. He needs all the space there that he can get. So, I'm sorry I said that. Actually, after reviewing everything, I guess I do need the East Wing removed. So, there you go. But again, this play-to-play scheme that a lot of people are thinking that he's doing here is raising a lot of eyebrows, and whether putting this ballroom in the way he is doing it is ethical. So, just so you know, how he got around this. Trump got around this by a law known as the National Historic Preservation Act, Section 106, by going to Section 107, which says the White House, the U.S. Capitol, and the U.S. Supreme Court building and their grounds are exempt from the review process. Now, as you know, the White House, the People's House, is given to the president during his term to live in. He doesn't own it, but Trump thinks he does. He's put up all this gold stuff in his Oval Office, and now this. He thinks it's his place. He's put that patio out and covered up the rose garden. He just going right along, making things like he wants. And so, even though National Park Service is in charge of the White House and its grounds, he just basically said, hey, it's my house, man. I'll do what I want with it. So, as I said, past presidents have submitted their plans to the National Capital Planning Commission, or the CPC. Trump has not done that, although he said he will, probably when it's done. So, it's just crazy, that he does all this stuff. And I'm sure it's going to be a beautiful ballroom, but what can you say? That is just the way Trump rolls. So, moving on, disgraced former Representative George Santos. You remember him. Well, he just served 3 months in prison, and his 7-year-old prison sentence has been commuted by, again, President Donald Trump. He said, hey, dude, you did okay. You're a loyal Republican. I'm letting you out. So the news was a shock to the disabled Navy veteran who he defrauded, he being Santos, but not surprising to legal experts who have been tracking Trump's expansive use of the pardon power. At this stage in his second term, Trump has far exceeded the clemency record of his first stint in the Oval Office, and he has front-loaded these actions compared to past presidents who typically issued pardons and giving people early release from prison in their final days in office. So far, less than a year into his second term, the president has granted clemency to more than 1,600 people, according to the Justice Department's website, far exceeding the level of most presidents in a full 4-year term. The bulk of those actions went to the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot offenders who, as you know, killed police officers and injured police officers, and caused one police officer to commit suicide. That doesn't matter. These offenders protested the results of the 2020 election, which Trump continues to still, to this day, falsely claim was stolen from him on a widespread voter fraud. On his first day as president, Trump fulfilled that campaign with the bulk of pardons to those people and others. And so there you go. And then again, now George Santos is his latest one. So we'll have to wait and see what happens on that. Trump even encouraged last week to give Israeli President Isaac Herzog to pardon Prime Minister Netanyahu, who is on trial for alleged corruption in the separate cases, cigars and champagne. And as Trump said, who the hell cares about this? He told Israel's parliament. It's no surprise that most of Trump's clemency actions have also focused on individuals he has deemed victims of politically motivated prosecutions against him. So, including, nearly 24 anti-abortion activists. He's done that too. Many such activists were accused of violating the freedom of access to clinic entrances or FACE, and he had them arrested. And he doesn't like that. And so George Santos is actually, no other, just the same. George, you're okay. Trump, is a convicted 34-count felon, and what's going to happen with George Santos? This is fine. So he's out of jail and has been pardoned for his crimes, and then he's paid for that on a federal level. But so the state prosecutor said, great, we're going to go after him now on the state charges, and we'll get him his butt back in jail where he belongs. So, and Trump can't do anything about the state level charges, so we'll have to wait and see what happens. Yeah, it gets kind of crazy there, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Now we're going to look quickly at the government shutdown. So rumors are now flying that the government shutdown is likely to end sometime this week, which didn't happen. There was rumors that the Democrats were going to bend after the No King's Day protests were done, but as I said, that did not happen. So the White House is going to have to look very closely, along with other things, about what they're going to do here. They still refuse to budge to put back in the Medicare and Medicaid Benefits, food stamps will not be happening in November because the money's run out for that. Food banks that are federally getting money, that's going to stop, so they're going to run out of money. And, of course, the blame game continues to go around. It's the Dems' fault, and the Dems say it's the Republicans' fault. And, they really thought something was going to happen here. But so far, the Democrats and the Republicans are not budging. Specifically, the Democrats are not budging. So, there you go. Going back quickly to this Gaza peace talks that I was just talking about, this fragile ceasefire has had its first major test Sunday as Israeli forces launched a wave of deadly strikes, as I told you earlier in this podcast, saying Hamas militants had killed 2 soldiers, and Israeli security officials said in a transfer of aid to the territory was halted. So they stopped the food from coming in. The military later said it was resumed enforcing the ceasefire, and the official confirmed that the aids to the Palestinians there would resume. The official spoke, of course, on condition of anonymity because he's not authorized to discuss the issue. So a little over a week has passed since the start of the U.S. proposed ceasefire aimed at ending 2 years of war. U.S. President Donald Trump said the ceasefire remained in place, and we want to make sure it's going to be very peaceful. So hopefully that is the truth. So, in my last story, which is from Florida here, the organizers behind an amendment to legalize marijuana in Florida contended this week that the administration of Governor Ron DeSantis is interfering with their efforts to make the 2026 ballot, and they have asked a court to stop it. Smart and Safe Florida, the political committee sponsoring the amendment, which is largely supported by Trulieve, a medical marijuana company, had last week filed a lawsuit over an effort by state election officials to toss out as many as 200,000 signatures for the initiative. They called the actions by Secretary of State Cory Byrd, appointed by DeSantis, unlawful and unprecedented. Smart and Safe needs to collect more than 880,000 signatures to make the ballot. The new lawsuit points out that Maria Matthews, head of the Division of Elections, told local supervisors to throw out the signed and validated signatures because Smart and Safe Florida did not provide the people it reached out by mail with a copy of the entire amendment. Matthews' edited to toss out the signatures came after Byrd in March advised Smart and Safe Florida that the petition it is mailing voters and asking them to return wasn't valid because it didn't contain the wording of the amendment. The group began including the full language following Byrd's correspondence and also provided Byrd with the names of all those who returned forms to it by mail. Nevertheless, the suit calls Matthews' actions unlawful. Smart and Safe filed this lawsuit to require the Secretary of State to follow Florida's law and to prevent the state from denying the Florida voters who signed the petition to have their voices heard. They're saying that, this is absolute BS, and it needs to be on the ballot. And, to invalidate 200,000 signatures that was lawfully gathered is illegal. So they're going to sue the DeSantis administration and the people there. So they can, get this hopefully turned around. Now, what this is all about is the last time this was on the ballot, it got 58% votes out of 60% needed to get on the ballot. So it failed by 2%. The people of Florida and its residents want to have the ability to have marijuana in set amounts, be able to use in the privacy of their own home, like they do in Alaska. And Colorado has the same law, and it's been perfect, no issues. DeSantis keeps saying, drugs on the streets, kids. These are responsible adults that want to do this. And this is where DeSantis got in trouble because when this was on the initiative before, he used $10 million of money from his wife's nonprofit organization, Hope Florida, that was supposed to go to other things to pay for these political ads to get this, thing shot down so people wouldn't support it. And he was successful because of the high threshold of 60% that they need here in Florida to get these ballots on the measure so people can vote on them. I mean, he knew this was going to pass. He did. So this is his little thing he did. And here's his other trick. He's trying to stop this so they can't get it on the ballot so people can't vote for it because, this time around, people will probably get that 60% threshold. So we'll just have to wait and see. Anyway, This is your edition of The Right Has Left. I am your host, Roy Garten. I want to thank you for joining me. And still, we've got more news for next week. Until then, you try to have a good week. Take care.